Well, let's now take a deeper dive into the cashless policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. As promised, we're joined on the news at 10 by Mr. Olushola Amusan, who is a digital financial analyst and the Chief Executive Officer of VEST. He joins us live from the United States. Well, thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. You must have seen images from banks and ATM points of Nigerians wanting to get cash for their daily needs. And I wonder for you, how did all that come across to you in terms of the handling of a cashless policy?
Yeah, from a policy standpoint, right? Obviously, analysts around the world have given their opinion about how they think the policy was malhandled. Like, the policy is an important policy. Definitely the government has interest in, making sure that certain things get done properly, except that the delivery of the policy itself came at such a time where, because of the fact that Nigeria isn't quite prepared for such a cashless economy, it didn't dawn on the people that, okay, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. So unfortunately, the scenario that you saw all across the country is definitely as expected for a country that hasn't quite prepared well.
So what more then do you think should be done as a matter of urgency to end this difficulty which Nigerians have been facing while using online channels to meet basically their financial obligations?
I mean, now that, it's a case of trying to fix what has already happened, I think one of the key things to do is to work very closely with, digital channels, and make sure that there is a lot more work done to prepare, the populace. What I'm saying here is that banks, digital banking channels and platforms, mobile apps that basically allow money transmission within Nigeria have a lot of orientation to do. And there has to be some hybrid methodology where you can't just condemn or sort of like relegate the whole process to, digital. You need to understand that there are folks who are not yet aware of how to use these platforms. I also see there is a concurrent clampdown on POS service providers because of some of the challenges and some of the abuse that those ones also got involved in. But essentially, those kind of POS service providers represent an hybrid system where you're combining digital channels and actual money disbursing channels, that would at least provide some form of succor to people who live in communities where they can't even access 4G or 5G internet to access the banking platforms. You see, many of the banking channels also came crumbling under the pressure because they were not prepared for the amount of people that started using them. Neither did they even have support services. I'm talking about customer support services that would be able to answer the questions of people in the event of any breakages. So it's a collective effort. First, a lot of patience has to be exercised. Even people who normally would have used cash for everything need to take it easy and see how we can work together with the few banking channels that are available. Obviously, a lot of scaling issues are going on with all of the banks as well. Over a weekend, let's say they used to get 10 million people trying to make withdrawals. Now they're going to have 3 times or 5 times that number, right, because this guy can't even find cash at the ATM terminals. So there's a lot of need for scale from a technology standpoint. Right. Many of these banks are still on legacy systems, so you don't have auto scaling, and some of the other cloud technologies that can make a platform that used to take 1 million people now, be able to accommodate 20 million people. So a lot of work has to be done. What is the National Orientation Agency doing about this? There is budget for publicity from the federal government. Agencies of government outside the CBN, because clearly the CBN is crumbling under that pressure, outside the CBN need to then say, okay, what can we do? Ministry of Finance, Ministry of, the National Orientation Agency, all of these guys need to put resources into, public enlightenment. So I'm talking about Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and all of the other ethnic group kind of announcements on mass media to let people know other things that they can do and how we all have to exercise patience to be able to get to where we intend to get to.
Interesting. So it's a collective work. But, amidst all of these challenges, we've seen a rise in new online platforms, payment platforms for both local and international transactions. And I wonder, what does this portend for the country? Is this some sort of silver lining amidst all the challenges?
Yeah, I actually think that it's also a sign of the maturing that is happening to our financial services sector. So it's totally okay for alternative services, digital payment platforms, mobile applications that are built on banking as a service protocols to continue to emanate. So the rise that you see is actually showing that there is demand, for these financial services. Banking services penetration, clearly is not something that can be attained, with just the traditional banks. So there has to be a proliferation of, other kind of software services that are layered on banks, still regulated, but that demonstrate that there is innovation that can serve all of these other segments. And beyond payments, there has to be insurance technology. There has to be lending technology, additional platforms, as long as they are being subjected to, the environment that allows them to innovate, but also regulates them so that the consumer can be ultimately protected.
So the classic question naturally will be, where does this put traditional banks and their online banking service?
Trust me, I see the banks even seeing a lot of, they're also on their toes, right? So you see like the policies that now makes banks to actually become holding companies so that they can also create digital technology products, right? So some of the banks now have their own spin-off, products that is different from their traditional e-banking portal, which are built on legacy systems. And they're also spinning off very, very, adaptable, fast, fancy, mobile applications. And if they don't move as fast as possible, you would see many of these other platforms sort of like taking over and becoming, licensable by the CBN. But what I really see is something that constitutes a partnership between the legacy banks and these applications. So it moves from competition to collaboration. And you can see these mobile applications extending the value that the legacy banks already have, having the cover of the licensing, regulation, and years of experience that these traditional banks already have, and some form of control to be able to make sure that we land in a good place from a consumer standpoint.
Olushola Amusan, a digital financial analyst, CEO of Vesti. It's okay to call you a tech bro, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on the news at 10.
A pleasure.